Okay, we're going to replace the back screen cover on a DellInspiron1521. First thing I'm going to do, which I actually already did before I started the tape, and I'm just demonstrating here, taking a little mini screwdriver and I'm prying out the little rubber pieces that are hiding the screws, and that's how you get to get the screen open. Take off those little rubber nubs, and that'll open up the screws for you to unscrew, and then the whole front bezel will come off. Now I like to keep the screws, as I'm taking them out here, keep them in the same pattern so I know exactly where they go when I put them back, because underneath those rubber nubs that are over the screws, there's glue, and sometimes that glue comes off more on one piece of rubber than another piece of rubber when you're removing them, and if you put them all back in different spots, it's going to be uneven and some might not stick as well. So I like to keep the rubber pieces and the screws going in the same hole as I took them out of. Once you get the screws out, try to find a spot where you could pry the front part of the screen off, the front bezel there, the plastic piece. And once you have one, just kind of follow it around with your fingernail or a piece of plastic or something. Try not to scratch the screen if you're grabbing it from the inside. And once you're sure all the screws are out, you might have to give it a little force to get some of the corners up, but you'll be able to do it if you just mess with it enough and you just keep jiggling it around. I'm actually going to take the hinge cover plate off and see if there's anything under that hinge cover plate that's holding this front panel on. See if it'll make it any easier for us. And just kind of keep inching around, and eventually, if you pull in the right way, it'll come off. Sometimes there's a little bit of glue or tape, sticky tape, under the front bezel of the screen that's holding it to the screen. So on older laptops, you're going to find that. Newer laptops, not as much, but there's one just piece here that's just sticking us up. Just going to keep jiggling, and eventually it'll come out. Grab it from the bottom, grab it from the top. See if there's any hinge there that's holding it in. And we're just inching it away, and we finally get it. Notice I didn't force anything. You don't want to force it. You will break something if you force it. Okay, the reason we're replacing this hinge cover plate is the left hinge actually broke away. And sometimes when the hinges break, it's not just the hinge that breaks, it's actually the plate. The back of the screen, that plastic plate, that snaps, and that's where the hinges connect to. So if that snaps, it's just as bad as if you broke a hinge. One of the parts needs to be replaced. So what I'm going to do now is get the screen out. We're going to get the screen out of the picture. We don't want the screen in there for the risk of us damaging it or any other reason. And the way to get the screen out is attack it from the sides. There's 4 screws, or a couple screws sometimes, holding in the screen from the side. And once you get those 4 tiny screws out on each side, the screen should just pop right out. So we'll see if that happens here. This laptop has a webcam. Sometimes a webcam makes it a little tougher too. Okay, let's get the other side now. It's always little tiny Phillip head screws holding them in from the side, holding the screen in. And you'll see how the screen will pop right out once we get those screws out. Now these screws, it doesn't matter which, if you put them back in different holes, because there's no glue on them like the front bezel screws. Okay, now we're going to flip that screen up, see if it'll pop out. Now it did pop out, but if you noticed, that ribbon cable going up to the top of the screen was attached to the webcam. It is not meant to be yanked out like I did. Luckily, it didn't break. It actually just popped out of the connector there. But you got to be careful when you're dealing with webcams to unhook the ribbon cable from the webcam before you pull the screen down. So that was a no-no what I just did, but I'll keep it in the film anyway. And then I'm going to squeeze both sides of the LCD connector right where it connects to the screen. There's two little connectors. You got to squeeze them and pull outwards, and then that will disconnect the LCD cable from the screen. And we're going to disconnect the LCD cable from the inverter. Now there's the screen and the inverter still connected. We're just going to take that, put it to the side for now. Going to get that big LCD cable out of the way. And then see what we have to do to actually get this back plate off. And one of the things we need to do is get under the bottom of the computer, because if you just notice there, the wires for the wireless antenna were coming up and they actually attached to the back plate of the screen. We got to pull those wires through the bottom of the laptop and get them out of the picture. And then we put the new back plate on. It will have new wireless antennas, and we have to feed them through the computer. Okay, there's two holding the wireless card in here, or attached to the wireless card here. And then there's like three other ones that are meant for like a Bluetooth and maybe a WAN card, which this computer does not have, but the antennas are still there. So we got to pull like 5 wires through the hole here. Okay, you can't really see from this angle, but you'll be able to see as I pull it out. Okay, I'm just pulling them through the bottom of the laptop, and then I got them all up to the surface there. There's like 5 or 6 wires. Now when I take the back cover off, those wires are going to come with it. Now the hinges on this computer are actually okay. It's that back cover that's broken. And it actually breaks right at this point, which is where it connects to the hinge. When a screen gets damaged like that, one of two things is going to break: the hinge or the back screen plate. And the back screen plate sometimes is a cheaper plastic, and it might tend to break more than the hinge. So then you got to replace the whole back plate. So just keep an eye open for that, and realize that's not always going to be the hinge that you got to replace. Okay, we're going to get this one out of the way and pull the new one in. Now you may be asking, where did I get the new one? Well, I'm going to show you right here. And you guessed it, eBay. Now how do you find out where to get it and what to type in? Well, I typed in DellInspiron1521 back plate to start off. See if any results came up. Nothing. So just took out the word plate, because maybe that's not the correct way of saying what that is, and just kept the word back. And now we find one here that says LCD back cover. Now I didn't know the model number of this thing, but if you look at that black one where it says back cover, it's a YY039. So I type in YY039, and after I did the search for that, I realized that YY031 is the white version of that. So you're able to find out model numbers even though you don't know them, just from doing eBay searches with the data that you do know. And sometimes people will include in their titles the model number. Now, if we were going to buy a black one, this looks like a good seller. They had 258 positive reviews, a power seller, 100% feedback. They're from Texas. $69, a decent price, free shipping. I don't see anything wrong with this seller. I would probably do a buy it now from them. And that's a similar seller. It might have been the same seller as I bought this one from. But I found out that the model number of this one is YY031 just from searching for LCD back cover. And then you could search by model number and get the exact one you need. Because on the older one, it did not have the model number written inside. I couldn't find it, so that's how I found out what the exact model number was, just from doing an eBay search. Now this one came with hinges, so I actually did take the old hinges out from the other one and just put this one in since the hinges are already connected. Now I'm just screwing the hinges in from the back. I'm not going to do a full-blown, putting all the screws back in the hinges yet. Just want to make it so it's stable so I can put the screen in, and then we'll tighten up all the screws. But there are 2 screws that go in the back that hold the hinges together, and I figured I'd put those in now since I have access to the back. And since we're able now to close the back cover, let's throw the hinges or the screws into the bottom for the hinges, just to make sure everything's secure. There's 2 screws that hold the hinges in on the bottom. So you got 2 on the back, 2 on the bottom. Now I'm tightening them all up, make sure they're all tight. Flip it back over. And we'll put the screen back in. Just making sure all the hinge screws are tight. And here's those 5 wires that came out of the original one. They also came with the new one, which was good. We didn't have to go fishing the wires through anywhere. We're going to take them all and we're going to put them through the hole in the laptop here and have them pop out the bottom and reattach them at the bottom. This way that will be done. And the only thing we have to concentrate on is getting the screen back in and the webcam. Now I'm going to feed these wires back through and reattach them to the wireless card. And the ones that aren't attached to a wireless card, there's a little spot that Dell provided. You can just slide them in there so they're out of the way and not touching anything. This could get a little tricky with those little connectors, but they snap on once you get them set the right way. There's usually 2 on a wireless card. On a wireless end card, you're going to get 3 a lot of times. 3 antennas. Now we can put that plate back on. Seal that up. Okay, we can flip it back over now and work on getting the rest of it done. We're going to get the old plate now and take the webcam out, which is only held in by a few screws. It should pop right out. That little piece is the whole webcam. I'm going to put it into the new case here and just fasten it in with the screws. It's molded so it fits right in there, and there's a couple little pins that pop up that allow you to fasten it right in there. We're going to screw that in. 1 screw. Okay, screw the other one in. Those wires like to pop up, but when we get everything back together, we'll be able to push them down so they're flush with the top case there. Otherwise, the hinge cover plate's going to be bulging out. But since there's 5 wires, they have a lot of push to them. Now we're taking the screen. We're going to line it up. First, we're going to reattach the LCD cable and the cable that goes to the inverter. Towards the bottom there attaches to the inverter. Snaps right in. There's only one way it could go in. Easy connector. And then plug the LCD into the screen. LCD cable. Squeeze both sides. Pull it. It goes right in the connector. Now the only thing we got hanging is the webcam ribbon, which when we flip the screen over, we're going to gently put that in place and fasten it. It has just a ribbon. It's just a ribbon cable, and it fastens like a normal keyboard or mouse pad ribbon cable would fasten. Okay, just make sure that ribbon cable's fastened properly. Then just let the screen rest back. And we're going to go ahead and just screw in the screws into the side and fasten the screen in. I'm just going to speed up the video here while I do that. Got one side done. They're tiny little screws. Sometimes they can be a little hard to work with. Okay, 4 on each side, good to go. Now what we're going to do is tighten up the hinges here. Use a heavier screwdriver just to make sure there's a little extra torque, because you don't want those screws to become loose. That's when the screen starts to flop all around. Okay, now we are going to take the front bezel here and snap it back on to the front of the screen. Okay, I started with that right hinge because a lot of times on Dells, on the right hinge, sometimes you gotta loop a piece of the bezel into the hinge before it'll snap in. And then the rest of it should just fall into place. Snap it as you go around, and then just always just double check to make sure you got everything snapped in properly. Even down by the Dell logo there, that needs to snap in. That Dell logo right above the keyboard, you'll see it when I turn it around. You're looking for any area that's lumping out and that's not sitting flat. Okay, we did flatten it there. And then once that's done, it's time to put the screws back in. Now remember, we're going to keep them in the same pattern as the way we took them out. So we know that that one goes in the bottom right. And the reason, again, I do that is because each screw is going to have a certain amount of glue on it, different amount of glue on it than the other. And because you're using those screws with the rubber pieces, you want to make sure the amount of glue is the same just to keep consistency so none of the rubber pieces come falling off. So. Okay, almost done with all the screws. We're going to tighten them up. Don't over tighten them. I don't like to over tighten anything on a laptop because you're dealing with a lot of plastic, and over tightening plastic tends to weaken it. Just make them snug. Now we're going to take the rubber pieces and put them back on. And in the upper left corner. And then those two screws by the webcam are not rubber, they're flat pieces of plastic. And they're just there for cosmetic reasons. So you don't see the screw head. Can put a little pressure on each one of those after you're done putting them in. Make sure that they stick. Okay, now we're going to get that gaggle of wires to stay down. Make sure it's in the right spot. If it's in the right spot, the hinge cover will do the work of keeping it down. They all have pre-indented slots there that all the wires should go into. So this hinge cover should be able to lay flush. And if it's not sitting flat, just double check to see if there's anything under there. Okay, and it looks like this one is done. Back cover replaced. And that's how you do that on a DellInspiron laptop.